It was a rainy afternoon, and I was sitting in my favorite place, the small town library. I loved this library because it was quiet and cozy, with big windows and soft chairs. I always went there after school to read. Books made me feel happy and calm. I would lose myself in stories and forget everything else. That day, as I was reading, I noticed someone standing nearby. I looked up and saw a boy, about my age, looking at the books on the shelf. He had messy brown hair and bright blue eyes. He looked different from other boys I knew. Calm but curious, like he belonged in this quiet place. I tried not to stare, but it was hard. He looked up and caught my eye, and I quickly looked down, feeling shy. "Hi," he said, stepping closer to me. "What are you reading?" I looked up, surprised that he was talking to me. "Oh, it's a book about travels," I said, holding up the book so he could see the cover. "It's interesting." He smiled, and I felt my face turn red. "I like travel books too," he said. "It's nice to imagine being in new places." I nodded, not sure what to say next, but he didn't seem to mind. He looked at the book and then back at me. "I'm Jake," he said, holding out his hand. I shook his hand, feeling a little nervous. "I'm Emma," I replied softly. "Nice to meet you, Emma," he said with a smile. "Do you come here a lot?" "Yes, I do," I said. "I like reading here. It's quiet. And, well, I just like it." "Me too," he said, looking around the library. "I'm new in town. I'm still getting used to this place." I nodded, feeling a little more comfortable now. "What brought you here?" "My family moved because of my dad's work," he explained. "It's a small town, but it's nice. People are friendly." I smiled, and we started talking about books, our favorite stories, and the places we wanted to visit one day. Jake was easy to talk to. He was funny and kind, and I felt happy around him. It was strange, but I felt like I had known him for a long time, even though we had just met. After that day, Jake and I started meeting at the library often. Sometimes we would sit together and read quietly, and other times we would talk about our dreams and things we loved. I started looking forward to these moments with him. He made me laugh, and he listened to me like he really cared about what I said. My heart would beat a little faster whenever I saw him, and I knew I was starting to like him more than just as a friend. One day, as we were sitting together in the library, Jake turned to me and said, "Hey, do you want to go get some coffee with me?" My heart skipped a beat, but I tried to stay calm. "Yes, that sounds nice," I said, smiling. We walked to a small cafe nearby. The rain had stopped, and the streets were wet and shiny under the evening lights. Inside the cafe, it was warm and cozy, with soft music playing in the background. We ordered our coffee, and I couldn't stop smiling. Sitting across from Jake, I felt so happy, like this moment was perfect. As we sipped our coffee, we talked about our lives. Jake told me about his family, his favorite hobbies, and his dreams of traveling the world. I told him about my love for books and how I wanted to be a writer one day. He listened to me with bright eyes, and I felt like he understood me in a way that no one else did. After a while, it got chilly outside. Jake noticed and took off his jacket, handing it to me. "Here, wear this," he said. "I don't want you to get cold." I took his jacket, feeling a warm feeling inside my chest. I put it on, and it felt soft and comforting, like a hug. I wanted to thank him, but I felt too shy to say much, so I just smiled. As we walked back to the library, I slipped my hands into the jacket pockets. I felt something inside one of the pockets, something small and folded. Curious, I pulled it out. It was a piece of paper folded neatly. I hesitated for a moment, but then I opened it to see what it was. The paper was a letter, written in small, neat handwriting. I could see the name Mia written at the bottom. As I read the first few lines, my heart sank. It was a love letter, filled with sweet words and hopes for the future. Mia talked about how much she missed Jake and how she was waiting for him to come back to her. The words were full of love, longing, and sadness. I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I quickly folded the letter and put it back into the pocket, my heart pounding. I didn't know what to think. Was Jake married? Was Mia his wife? Why hadn't he told me? My mind was full of questions, and my heart felt heavy with confusion and sadness. We walked back to the library in silence. Jake didn't seem to notice my change in mood, but I couldn't look at him the same way. I felt hurt and betrayed, but I didn't know if I had the right to feel that way. After all, Jake and I were only friends, but my heart had started to hope for more. As we reached the library, Jake turned to me and said, "Thanks for coming with me, Emma. I had a great time." I forced a smile, nodding. "Me too, Jake," I replied, my voice quiet. He took his jacket back and we said goodbye. I watched him walk away, feeling lost and alone. All my happy feelings had disappeared, replaced by confusion and sadness. I didn't know what to do. Should I ask him about the letter? Or should I just try to forget about it? My heart ached, and I felt like I was caught between two choices. As I walked home, I couldn't stop thinking about the letter, about Mia, and about Jake. Part of me wanted to believe that there was some explanation, but another part of me felt scared. What if he was married? What if I was just a silly girl with a foolish hope? I didn't know what to do, but I knew that I needed answers. I couldn't keep wondering forever. I decided that the next time I saw Jake, I would ask him the truth, no matter how hard it might be to hear. I spent the next few days thinking about Jake and the letter. My mind kept going back to the words I had read, to the name Mia signed at the bottom. I wanted to believe there was a good explanation. Maybe Mia wasn't his wife. Maybe she was just a friend. But each time I thought this, my heart filled with doubt. If she was only a friend, why didn't Jake mention her? I tried to focus on my books and the things I usually loved, but it was hard. I couldn't enjoy anything. Even at the library, the one place that always made me feel happy, I felt sad and distracted. Each time I saw a book or a word that reminded me of him, my heart felt heavy. I was angry, but I was also hurt. I didn't want to feel this way, but I couldn't stop myself. Finally, after 3 long days, I saw Jake again at the library. He was sitting by the window reading a book. He looked up and smiled when he saw me, but I didn't feel the same excitement as before. I felt nervous and a little afraid, but I knew I had to talk to him. I needed answers. "Hi, Emma," he said with a big smile. "It's nice to see you. How have you been?" I forced a small smile and sat down across from him. I've been okay," I said, my voice soft. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Jake, I found something in your jacket pocket the other day." He looked at me, a little confused. "Oh? What did you find?" I swallowed, feeling my hands shake a little. "It was a letter," I said slowly. "A letter from someone named Mia." For a moment, Jake's face changed. I saw surprise, and then something sad, like a shadow over his smile. He looked down at his hands, quiet. I waited, my heart pounding, hoping he would explain. After a long pause, he looked up and nodded. "Yes, Mia," he said softly. "She's someone very important to me." I felt a pain in my heart, like I had been right to worry. "Jake, are you married to her?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked at me with sad eyes and shook his head. "No, Emma, I'm not married to Mia," he said. "She's not my wife, but she's my best friend. We've known each other since we were kids." I felt a small bit of relief, but I was still confused. "Then why didn't you tell me about her?" I asked, my voice soft. "Why did she write to you like that?" Jake took a deep breath and looked out the window, like he was thinking about something far away. "Mia is very sick, Emma," he said finally. "She has been sick for a long time, and she feels very lonely. I promised her a long time ago that I would always be there for her, no matter what. She doesn't have anyone else." His words surprised me. I felt my anger start to melt away, replaced by a feeling of sadness and pity. I could see now that this was more complicated than I had thought. "So, that's why she wrote that letter?" I asked. Jake nodded. "Yes," he said softly. "She feels scared and alone. The letter was her way of reaching out, of asking me to stay close. She doesn't have a family, and I'm the only person she trusts." I looked down at my hands, feeling a mix of emotions: sadness, relief, and something like shame for doubting him. "I didn't know," I whispered. I thought I thought you were hiding something. Jake shook his head. I'm sorry, Emma, he said. I should have told you about Mia, but it's a hard story to tell. It's painful for me and I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want you to worry. I looked up at him, seeing the sadness in his eyes. I could see now that he was telling the truth, that he cared about Mia, but not in the way I had feared. I felt guilty for doubting him, for thinking he was keeping secrets from me. I knew now that he was a good person, someone who cared deeply for his friend. Thank you for telling me, Jake, I said softly. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. He reached across the table and gently held my hand. It's okay, Emma, he said. I understand. I know it looked strange, but Mia, she's part of my life, and I can't leave her alone. I hope you can understand that. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. I understood now, but I also knew that Mia would always be a big part of Jake's life. I couldn't change that, and as much as I cared for him, I realized that I might always come second in his heart. Mia needed him more than I did. We sat in silence for a while, both of us lost in thought. I felt a little sad, but I also felt closer to Jake, like I understood him better now. He wasn't just a boy I liked. He was a friend, someone who cared deeply and who had his own burdens to carry. As we said goodbye that day, I felt a strange sense of peace. I knew things would never be simple between us, but I felt grateful to know the truth. And as I walked away, I couldn't help but wonder what I should do next. Should I stay close to Jake and accept his friendship, even if I knew Mia would always come first? Or should I try to move on, to let go of my hopes and find my own path? I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew I had a choice to make. And whatever choice I made, I would have to be strong. I would have to find a way to be happy, even if it meant letting go. After that talk with Jake, I felt different. I understood him better, and I knew now that he cared for Mia in a special way. But knowing the truth didn't make everything easy. My heart still felt heavy, like a stone sitting inside me. I wanted to be happy for Jake, but a part of me felt sad, like I was losing something important. I thought about Jake and Mia all the time. I kept asking myself if I should keep seeing Jake as a friend or if I should move on. I knew Mia needed him, and I knew he would always put her first. That was his promise to her, and he would not break it. But this promise made me feel left out, like there was no place for me in his life, not in the way I wanted. I tried to act normal around him. We still met at the library and we still talked and laughed, but something felt different. I wasn't as happy as before. I kept my feelings to myself, but inside, I felt like I was falling apart. I wanted to tell him how I felt, but I was afraid he wouldn't understand. I didn't want to make things hard for him. I didn't want him to feel guilty because of me. One afternoon, I went to the park alone to think. It was a beautiful day, with the sun shining and a soft breeze blowing through the trees. I sat on a bench and watched the people around me. Kids playing, couples walking hand in hand, friends talking and laughing. I felt a little jealous of them. They all seemed so happy, so sure of themselves. I thought about Jake and how much he meant to me. I remembered our first meeting, his smile, and how he made me laugh. I remembered all the little things he did that made me feel special. But now I could feel my heart breaking. I knew I couldn't keep hoping for something that would never happen. I couldn't keep waiting for him, knowing that Mia needed him more. I realized that maybe the best thing for both of us was for me to let go. It was a hard thought to accept, but I knew it was true. I couldn't keep holding on to my feelings. I had to let Jake go even if it hurt. I had to find a way to be happy on my own, without waiting for him. When I got home, I felt tired, like I had been carrying a heavy weight all day. I knew what I had to do, but it didn't make it any easier. I decided that the next time I saw Jake, I would talk to him. I would tell him that I needed some time away, some time to clear my heart and find my own path. I hoped he would understand. The next day, I went to the library as usual, but my heart felt different. I knew this would be the last time I would see him for a while, and that thought made me sad. When I arrived, I saw him sitting by the window, looking out with a calm expression. He turned and smiled when he saw me, and for a moment, I felt my heart ache. "Hey Emma," he said. "You look different today. Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath and sat down across from him. I looked into his eyes, trying to be brave. "Jake, there's something I need to tell you," I said quietly. He looked concerned, but he nodded, waiting for me to continue. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our friendship," I began, my voice soft but steady. "You are very important to me, Jake. You've been a wonderful friend, and I care about you so much, but I think I need some time alone. I need to figure things out for myself." He looked surprised, and I could see a hint of sadness in his eyes. "What do you mean, Emma?" he asked, his voice gentle. I took another deep breath, trying to hold back my emotions. I think I need some distance just for a while," I said. "It's hard for me to explain, but I feel like I need to find my own path, to understand my own heart. I hope you understand." He looked down at his hands, silent for a moment. When he looked up, I saw understanding in his eyes, even though I could tell he was sad. "I understand, Emma," he said softly. "I don't want to make things hard for you. I just want you to be happy." Hearing those words made my heart ache even more, but I felt a small sense of relief. He understood, and he didn't hold it against me. He cared about my happiness, even if it meant letting me go. "Thank you, Jake," I said, giving him a small smile. "You've been a wonderful friend, and I'll never forget that." He reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. "I'll miss you, Emma," he said, "but I respect your decision. I hope you find what you're looking for." We sat in silence for a few moments, both of us lost in our thoughts. I felt a mix of sadness and peace. Saying goodbye was hard, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I had to let go of my hopes, of my dreams about Jake, so that I could find my own happiness. After a while, I stood up, and so did he. We hugged, and I felt tears in my eyes, but I held them back. This was a goodbye, but it wasn't the end. I would always care for him, but I had to move on. I had to find my own path. As I walked away from the library, I felt a strange sense of freedom. My heart still hurt, but I knew I was doing the right thing. I didn't know what the future held, but I felt ready to face it. I was ready to find myself, even if it meant being alone for a while. And as I walked, I thought about all the things I wanted to do, all the dreams I had put aside while hoping for something with Jake. Now I could focus on those dreams. I could learn to be happy on my own. After I said goodbye to Jake, I felt a strange emptiness inside. I thought that letting go would make me feel better, that I would feel free and happy. But instead, I felt lost. I had spent so much time thinking about Jake, hoping he would see me the way I saw him. Now, without that hope, I felt like I didn't know who I was or what to do. For the next few days, I kept to myself. I stayed away from the library and the cafe, places that reminded me of him. I tried to focus on my books and my writing, but it was hard. My thoughts would drift back to Jake, to the sound of his voice, to his kind smile. I missed him so much, but I knew I couldn't go back. I had made a choice, and I had to be strong. One evening, I went for a walk to clear my mind. The sun was setting, and the sky was painted with shades of pink and orange. It was beautiful, but I felt alone. As I walked through the park, I saw couples sitting on benches, friends laughing together, and families playing with their kids. I felt a pang of loneliness, wishing I could be like them, happy, with someone by my side. As I walked, I started thinking about my future. I had dreams before I met Jake, dreams of writing stories, of traveling, of discovering the world. I had let those dreams fade as I focused on him, but now I wanted to find them again. I wanted to remember what made me happy before. I wanted to find my own way. The next day, I decided to start something new. I pulled out my notebook and began writing down all the things I wanted to do, things I had forgotten about. I wrote about the places I wanted to visit, the books I wanted to read, the stories I wanted to write. I wrote down small goals, too, things like learning to cook a new recipe, visiting a nearby town, or joining a club. Each time I wrote something down, I felt a little better, like I was finding pieces of myself that I had lost. Days turned into weeks, and I kept busy with my list. I spent more time writing and exploring my own thoughts. I started going to a new cafe, where I would sit by the window with my notebook and write for hours. I even made a few new friends there, people who also loved books and stories. Slowly, I felt myself changing. I still missed Jake, but the sadness wasn't as sharp. I was beginning to feel happy on my own. One day, as I was sitting in the cafe, I saw a familiar face walk in. It was Jake. My heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, I wasn't sure what to do. I hadn't seen him since that day at the library. Part of me wanted to run away, but another part of me wanted to stay. I took a deep breath and decided to stay. I couldn't avoid him forever. Jake saw me and walked over, smiling. "Emma, it's so good to see you," he said, his eyes bright. I smiled back, feeling a mix of emotions. "Hi, Jake. It's good to see you too." He sat down across from me, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. I felt nervous, but I also felt a strange calmness. I was no longer hoping for something from him. I was just happy to see him as a friend. "So, how have you been?" he asked gently. I thought about all the things I had done since we last saw each other. "I've been okay," I said with a small smile. "I've been writing a lot, and I've started working on some of my goals. I even tried cooking a new recipe last week." He laughed softly. "That's great, Emma. I'm glad you're doing things you enjoy." I felt a warmth in my chest, knowing that he was happy for me. "Thank you, Jake," I said. "I feel like I'm finding myself again. It was hard at first, but I think I'm doing better now." He nodded, looking a little serious. "I'm really happy for you, Emma. You deserve to be happy." We talked for a while, sharing stories and memories. I told him about my writing, and he shared some of his own dreams and plans. It was nice to talk to him like this, without the weight of my old feelings. I realized that I still cared about him, but in a different way. He was a friend, someone who had helped me grow, even if it was painful. As we were finishing our coffee, he looked at me with a soft expression. "Emma, I want you to know that I think you're a strong person. You've gone through a lot and you've grown so much. I'm proud of you." His words made my heart feel full, and for the first time, I felt a real peace. "Thank you, Jake," I said, smiling. "You helped me in many ways, too. I'm grateful for that." We said goodbye with a hug, and as I watched him walk away, I felt no sadness, no pain. I felt proud of myself. I had learned to let go, to find happiness within myself. I knew I could keep moving forward, with or without him in my life. As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of freedom. I didn't know what the future held, but I was ready to face it. I was ready to keep growing, to keep discovering new parts of myself. And in my heart, I knew that this was only the beginning of my journey. After my talk with Jake at the cafe, I felt a new kind of peace. I realized that I had let go of my old hopes and dreams about him, and now I could focus on myself. Felt strange but also exciting. I didn't know exactly what my future would look like, but I was ready to explore it on my own terms. I kept working on the list of things I wanted to do, the list I had started when I decided to move on from Jake. One of the goals on my list was to visit a nearby town I had never been to. It wasn't far, maybe a 1-hour bus ride, but I had always felt too shy or too busy to go. Now I was determined to try it. I wanted to do things I hadn't done before, things that would help me grow and feel more confident. On Saturday morning, I packed a small bag with my notebook, a bottle of water, and a snack. I felt a little nervous as I left my house, but I reminded myself that this was part of my new journey. I could do this. I was doing this for me. When I got to the bus station, I bought my ticket and found a seat by the window. The bus was half full, with a mix of families, friends, and some people traveling alone. I watched as the scenery passed by outside. The green fields, small houses, and trees lining the road. I felt a sense of calm watching it all, like I was leaving my worries behind and stepping into a new adventure. After about an hour, the bus arrived in the small town. I stepped off and looked around. The town was charming, with cobblestone streets, small shops, and friendly people walking around. I took a deep breath, feeling the fresh air, and started exploring. I walked through the main street, looking at the little stores. There was a bakery with fresh bread and pastries, a flower shop with colorful flowers in pots outside, and a bookstore with big windows. Each place felt special, and I enjoyed walking around, taking in the sights and smells. As I passed the bookstore, I decided to go inside. I felt at home among the shelves of books. The store was small but cozy, with shelves filled with all kinds of books. I walked around slowly, looking at the titles and reading the covers. I felt relaxed and happy, like I had found a place that welcomed me. I picked up a book about traveling and started reading the first page. The words spoke to me. They were about discovering new places and learning about yourself along the way. I smiled, feeling like this book was meant for me. I decided to buy it as a reminder of my day, something to encourage me on my journey. After I left the bookstore, I went to a nearby park. It was a quiet place with benches, trees, and a small pond. I found a bench by the water and sat down, opening my new book. I read for a while, feeling peaceful and content. The sun was warm, and a gentle breeze made the leaves rustle around me. As I sat there, I thought about how much I had changed. A few weeks ago, I couldn't imagine doing something like this alone. I was always waiting for someone to make me feel happy, waiting for Jake to notice me. But now, I realized that I didn't need to wait for anyone. I could find happiness on my own. I could make my own adventures, and I didn't need someone else to make them special. I spent a few hours in the town, enjoying the sights, eating lunch at a small cafe, and writing in my notebook. I wrote about my feelings, about my hopes, and about how proud I felt. I wrote down the things I wanted to keep doing. More trips, more writing, more moments of peace like this one. When it was time to go back, I felt a little sad to leave. I had enjoyed my day in this new place, and it had shown me that there was so much more to explore, so much more I could do. But I also felt excited, because I knew I could come back anytime. This place was now a part of my journey, a reminder of my courage and growth. On the bus ride home, I thought about my future. I didn't have all the answers, but I felt stronger. I knew that I didn't need someone else to make my life meaningful. I could create my own happiness one step at a time. And even though my heart had been broken, I felt grateful for everything I had learned. When I got home, I opened my notebook and added more goals to my list. I wrote about other towns I wanted to visit, new hobbies I wanted to try, and stories I wanted to write. I felt a new excitement as I looked at my list, like each goal was a door waiting for me to open it. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about Jake. I still cared about him, and I was glad we were friends. But now my heart was lighter. I didn't feel sad or lost anymore. I had found a new path, a path that was just for me. And as I closed my eyes, I felt a sense of peace that I hadn't felt in a long time. I was ready for whatever came next. I knew there would be more challenges, more moments of doubt, but I also knew that I could handle them. I was no longer afraid of being alone, no longer waiting for someone else to make my life complete. I was learning to love myself, to trust my own strength. And in that quiet moment, I felt truly happy. I knew that this was just the beginning of my journey, and I was excited to see where it would take me. A few weeks had passed since my trip to the small town. Since that day, I felt a new kind of strength in my heart. Each day, I did something small to make myself happy. Sometimes I read a new book, sometimes I tried a new recipe, and sometimes I simply went for a walk, enjoying the quiet moments. I was learning to enjoy my own company, and it felt good. One afternoon, I decided to go back to the library. I hadn't been there much since I said goodbye to Jake, but I missed it. The library was where everything started, where I had found both love and loss. But now, I felt ready to return, not with sadness, but with a sense of peace. When I walked in, I saw that everything was the same. The soft chairs, the rows of books, the big windows letting in warm sunlight. It all felt familiar and comforting. I walked around, looking at the books, feeling calm and happy. This was my special place, a place that belonged to me. As I browsed through the shelves, I picked up a book about travel. It reminded me of my recent trip and my goal to explore new places. I sat down by the window, opened the book, and started reading. I felt at peace, as if everything was finally right. After a while, I heard a soft voice say, "Emma." I looked up, surprised, and saw Jake standing there. He was holding a book, looking a bit shy but with a gentle smile. My heart felt a small tug, but it was different this time. I didn't feel the old longing or the sadness. I just felt happy to see him. "Hi, Jake," I said, smiling back. "It's good to see you." He sat down in the chair across from me, and for a moment we looked at each other in silence. There was no awkwardness, no sadness, just a warm feeling of friendship. I realized then that I had truly moved on. I had found my own happiness, and seeing him didn't change that. "How have you been?" he asked, his voice soft. "I've been well," I replied, feeling a sense of pride in my words. "I've been exploring, writing, doing things I enjoy." Jake nodded, looking pleased. "That's wonderful, Emma. I'm glad you're happy." We talked for a while, sharing stories about our recent days. I told him about my trip to the small town, about the bookstore and the park, and he listened with interest. He told me about his own life, about his plans and dreams. It felt good to talk to him as a friend, without any hopes or hidden feelings. As we talked, I realized something important. Jake had been a big part of my life, and he had helped me learn many things about myself. But he wasn't my whole life. I had my own dreams, my own happiness, and I was strong on my own. I didn't need him to make me feel complete. When our conversation ended, we both stood up, ready to say goodbye. He looked at me with a soft expression and said, "Emma, I'm really proud of you. You've come so far, and you're amazing." His words touched my heart, but they didn't make me feel sad or hopeful. They just made me feel happy, like I had truly grown. "Thank you, Jake," I said. "You helped me in many ways, too. I'll always be grateful." We hugged, and it felt like a real goodbye. Not a sad goodbye, but a peaceful one. I knew I might see him again, but now I didn't feel any longing or worry. I felt free, ready to continue my own journey. As I left the library, I thought about how much I had changed. I felt light, as if a weight had been lifted from my heart. I walked home with a smile, feeling proud of myself and everything I had learned. I knew that this was only the beginning. There were so many more things I wanted to do, so many more places I wanted to see. That night, I sat by my window, looking at the stars. I thought about my future and all the dreams I had for myself. I didn't know what would happen next, but I wasn't afraid. I was ready to face whatever came my way, to keep growing, learning, and finding new happiness. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. I didn't need anyone else to make me feel complete. I had found peace in myself, and I knew that I could always find happiness, no matter where life took me. As I looked up at the stars, I whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning." And I knew it was true.